It's been a while since I've been this way, but it's a blessing to be here. We are on this tour that we're calling the Talented 10th Tour. Calling it that for all the obvious reasons. It was, of course, W.B. Du Bois, the great black intellectual, who put that phrase out there. And we have tried to name this tour the Talented 10th Tour in part to focus attention on where that 10% of young people are who are going to step up and lead. Every generation has to have that 10% of people, Du Bois argued, who will step up and lead by example. And I like to say, when I talk of leadership, servant leadership, people who understand that leadership is really about love and service for everyday people. We'll talk about that tonight, and that's my definition of leadership, that you can't lead people if you don't love people, and that you can't save people if you don't serve people. So what is the depth of your love for our people, and what is the quality of your service to them going to be? This generation, your generation of student leaders on campus now, combined with my generation, I'm just over 40, so my generation, their generation, your generation, collectively we represent the first generation of black people who are going to lead our community, lead this country into the next generation without having lived through the civil rights movement. So we have never ever had black leaders in America who did not come out of the struggle. All of our leaders heretofore, obviously, have come either out of slavery or out of segregation here in the Jim Crow and Jane Crow South. So all of our leaders either out of slavery or out of segregation. So the question is, what happens now with a new generation of young black leaders taking the reins of authority and responsibility? For that matter, Barack Obama, you know, barely a kid at the tail end of the movement. I think Barack is 48, I think, 46, 48. Dr. King assassinated in 1968. So Barack was just, you know, Barack himself, just a kid when Dr. King was assassinated, when the movement as we know it started to change in its formulation. So even a guy running for president, say nothing of those of you who are student leaders who will be addressing tonight, these young persons, it really does challenge us to think about what kind of leadership will be provided in black America and for America by black folk, with a generation of folk who just don't know what that movement was all about looking for. So you put a book out called The Covenant with Black America, and it and its follow-up both go to the top of the New York Times bestseller list. It says again that people are hungry and thirsty for an agenda that we can wrap our arms around, wrap our brains around, wrap our hearts around about how we advance our community in the coming months and years. So I think that's the agenda. It's in part what led to these presidential debates that I've moderated this year on national television on PBS. It's connected to why we're on this tour talking about leadership and ultimately how we hold people accountable. Now the bottom line is this: we can't hold other people accountable unless we first hold ourselves responsible. And this tour is about talking about the responsibility we have to be living epistles, to be examples of the kind of servant leadership that we crave. I said to somebody, I gave a speech a few hours ago in Milwaukee and came straight here, and I said in that speech to the audience that people would rather see a sermon than hear a sermon. They'd rather see a sermon than hear a sermon. So we need to start being the sermons rather than preaching these sermons. I say all the time that we, your generation, my generation, we are the leaders that we have been looking for. So that if we really buy into that and become first responsible, then it makes it easier for us to hold other people accountable. Back to the covenant, we lay out the top 10 issues of importance to black people, starting with healthcare, education, economic opportunity, closing the racial digital divide, reforming our criminal justice system. Unfortunately, as black folk, we don't have the luxury of picking one issue at a time. We're being hit on every side, multiple fronts, and we have to respond in that same way. Now, the good news is that we've always been able to do that. We've always been a community that succeeded in spite of and not because of. We've never been a community that had as its framework optimism, but rather one of hope, which we'll talk about tonight, and what it means to remain hopeful even when the odds are against you. So we don't have the luxury of focusing on one issue at a time. We got to hit all these things simultaneously, and that's where Tennessee State comes in. That's where this tour comes in. That everybody in this audience tonight has a different, particular, and unique discipline, interest. Everybody has a different field of human endeavor. But whatever field you go into, Dr. King put it this way, that each of us ought to do our work so well, whatever our work is, we each ought to do it so well that the dead, the living, or the unborn couldn't do it any better. And what Senator Obama said to me, who I've known, been friends with for years, what Senator Obama said to me, which I think he's right about, is that if he were to be elected president, the day he is elected, the view of America changes the world over. Having a black man as president whose name is Barack Hussein Obama just that reality on the day he's elected changes how we are viewed around the world. And I think on balance that would be a good thing. I think any change from President Bush at this point is a good thing in terms of how we perceived around the world. But certainly, you talk about a contrast to George Bush, Barack Hussein Obama, would be a major, major statement we'd make to the world. Now that said, that's the easy part. The tough part is getting there. And with all due respect to Senator Obama, I think, quite frankly, he's not been courageous enough. He's not been aggressive enough. He's been, I think, out-campaigned. And the Clinton campaign, let's give them credit now. They've been around a lot of years doing this, Bill and Hillary. They do not make mistakes, and they are awfully good. So Barack's up against a formidable machine. So I think he's got to be more aggressive. I think he's got to be a bit more courageous, speaking out about issues that matter. The bottom line is if Barack Obama had the support that Jesse Jackson had inside of black America in '84 and '88, this race would be over. Hillary would pack up her bags and have to go home right now. Because the difference in who's going to win the primary on the Democratic side is the black vote. So if he had already locked up the same number, the same kind of support that Jesse locked up in '84 and '88 inside of black America, he'd be so far ahead, it would be over, and Hillary would lose today. But he doesn't have that kind of support in black America, and that's the real challenge. I would hate to be Barack Obama to wake up on the morning after the election and realize that I didn't win the nomination by the margin of the absence of black folk in the polls who voted for me. He had to live a long time trying to reconcile himself with how he didn't win because of the lack of black votes that he did not receive. So again, I wish him well. There's still time to turn this around. We'll see what happens. I saw he was just endorsed by my friend Deval Patrick, the black governor of Massachusetts. So, Barack is in it.
Thank you. Y'all better sit down. I ain't sitting in here. I said to some folk the other day, if you call yourself a leader and you look behind and ain't nobody following you, you just out for a walk. You just out getting some exercise. If you call yourself a leader and nobody is following you, if you are a leader, somebody ought to be following. If you're a leader, somebody ought to be following. You see a bunch of black folk, y'all quiet like white folk. I know it. Y'all better talk to me, church saying. All right, this is a dialogue here, y'all. We start in slavery. We come to Tennessee in segregation, Jim Crow and Jane Crow South. Slavery, segregation, and again, because I like alliteration, we're going to call this the success generation. We are the hope of their dream. We are the fruit of their labor. We are the product, the seed of what they planted. But if the truth be told, we don't know what it means to be told no. No, you can't go to school here. No, you can't eat here. No, you can't work here. No, you can't lodge here. No, we don't want your money here. We are a generation that for all intents and purposes just roll like that. We don't know what it means to be told no, and so we floss and we ice and we bling bling. We go where we want to go, do what we want to do, and roll like we want to roll. But our leadership is going to be defined, just like everybody else, by the conditions and circumstances that we find ourselves in. And so it's no wonder then that our big mama and them, no wonder then that our grandparents, great-grandparents, no wonder then that those who have come that road out of Jim Crow and Jane Crow America are scared out of their minds that we are going to drop the baton. They're scared to death because they know that leadership is formed by the conditions and circumstances surrounding it. So what does black America look like 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road with a bunch of us trying to lead the way who admittedly, but also unapologetically,